Hello, welcome back to Sample Chapters. I am reading you excerpts from Volume 1 of my book, which is entitled Why You Make God Smile Despite Your Faults and Weaknesses. This chapter is entitled Coping with Fear, the Phone Man. There are 3 tumble dryers I head for when I enter our launderette. I am sure they are hotter and more economical than the others. I was happy to see that number 2 was empty, and I proceeded to shove my wet washing into the warm drum. In my peripheral vision, I could see a figure standing to the right of me, watching my every move. As I inserted the first 20 pence into the slot, the figure walked right up to me, and I could tell it was a man in his 40s. He was so close that he was almost standing on my toes. While I turned the metal knob that throws my coins into the money tin inside the machine, he began mimicking my wrist actions. He put his fist next to mine and twisted it clockwise as if it was him who was feeding the machine. I turned my head to give him full eye contact and realised he was a person with a mental health disability. Better to say special educational needs, that's better. He had special educational needs. I smiled, but there was no reciprocation coming from his face. Realising that my dryer was next to his, I sat down on my laundry bag, feeling a little unnerved. Staring ahead, I could not tell if he was still glaring at me, but I knew his head was still facing my direction, so I grabbed my phone from my handbag and stared at the screen. I had no intention of playing a game or rereading old messages, but I realised the best thing to do was to appear too preoccupied for conversation. Now, even the most unobservant of people know that in this day and age, people in public places sit gawping at their phones. Long gone are the days when diners at a restaurant would remain staring into space while their friend has nipped to the toilet. It's like it's uncool to appear to be bored, and we simply must be seen to be focusing on our devices, even if our battery power is at 4%. But alas, my cunning plan did not work, but instead it encouraged my drying buddy to become over-interested in what was in my hand. He slid himself across the bench and pointed down at my blank screen. O2, 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 O2. Panic gripped my throat. When was he going to stop? Hoping to deter him from his inquisition over what phone provider I use, I donned a silly grin and nodded my head vigorously and quickly shouted aloud, "Yes!" This false confirmation prompted his hidden smile to emerge, and he looked around at the ladies on the far side of the room. "She on O2! She on O2! She on O2 too! Everybody here on O2. At this point, I considered leaving my bench and going back to my car to wait until my clothes were dry. However, he had also been intensely interested in my washing, and I feared he may steal it before I returned. Like I suspected, he sat back down and peered through the window of my dryer and began scrutinising the sock that was at the front of the cylinder. With his face up to the hot glass, he cocked his head to one side, just like Galen from Planet of the Apes. I wondered if he would begin to wrinkle his nose and start sniffing, but that was as far as his acting skills would allow. As he continued to chase the sock around the drum, I was nervous that he may ask me another odd question. To my relief, he suddenly disappeared. But strange, I hadn't noticed him walking away. A grunting noise came from the machine next to mine. He had climbed inside to fetch his vests. The poor thing had burnt his knees in the process, and a sadness washed over me when I thought that he probably has been accidentally injuring himself most of his life. As he grabbed his bags and headed towards the door, patellas still steaming, he turned to the same row of women he had called out to earlier and asked them if they would be back the same time next week. "Please come back," he pleaded. "Come back Friday, next Friday. See you then." The lying ladies nodded, and I pondered on how all human beings desire company, no matter who we are or how our brains are wired. There are some who prefer to be around animals, and those who can only tolerate certain people in small doses. But being on your own and being lonely are 2 different things. I sat there wondering what spiritual lessons I had learned from this experience. The soulish side of me was whispering, "You have learned not to do your drying on a Friday." But I began to think about how we can sometimes have a fear or incorrect judgment towards people we don't understand, especially those from a different class, upbringing, nationality, race, gender, temperament, age, or mental capacity. The latter are not always dangerous. The foeman had just wanted company. But misunderstandings can prevail when we are faced with people who are different from us. Both the poor and the wealthy can assume that each other are lazy. The elderly can assume the young are irresponsible, and the young can think that all elderly people are boring. Some fear that those of a chatty nature are going to talk them to death. But there are people in that category who have trained themselves to be good listeners. Likewise, those of a taciturn temperament can be judged as being moody or shy, yet in reality they can be very jolly and often have a great deal more confidence than those who love the sound of their own voice. God encourages us, "Do not judge others, or you too will be judged, for in the same way you judge others, you will be judged." And that is from Matthew 7, verses 1 to 2. Maclaren's exposition commentary of 1 John states that there is a way in which love produces boldness, and that is by casting out fear. He goes on to say that when we are in dread of God and what he will do with our lives, it is because we don't love him properly, and we can also fear other people in the same way, because we have preconceived judgments about them. He said, "We cannot both love and fear the same person or thing, and where love comes in, the darker slips out of the door." I understand that to mean that if we accepted people for who they were and made a conscious decision to have a loving regard towards them, then irrational fear is dispelled. Not every young man in a hoodie and a tracksuit is going to rob you because he wants to fund a drug habit. Not every Muslim is going to hack your head off with a machete because you don't worship Muhammad. Not everyone struggling with mental illness is going to stab you with a pair of kitchen scissors. Not every Christian TV evangelist is having an affair with his secretary or embezzling the funds in a Swiss bank account. I think the biggest "I'm scared of you because I'm focusing on your stereotype" situation I'm trying to overcome is the Chinese issue. Have you ever squirmed when watching an East Asian citizen on television being chastised by Australian airport officials for trying to smuggle dead rats into the country? A food bag full of wrinkly brown rodents is pulled out from his suitcase, and when he is given an angry glare, he shrugs his shoulders and claims they are a culinary delicacy. To prove his point, he digs a long nail into the rancid flesh and sucks out the juice from his finger. 12 plump maggots slip out of the bag and slide down the table. Millions of viewers sit in their homes retching as he gives a toothless grin and mutters, "Food, see, it's only food." Because of this program, I had started to develop a prejudice towards Oriental people, assuming that they all eat bugs and vermin. But of course that is not true. Some Chinese people can be great cooks. I really do not have to go and check my rice for cockroaches. Thank you for staying to the end to listen to that story. We do fall into the trap sometimes of judging others, don't we? Especially, like I said in the story, especially when people are different from us. If you're struggling with this, I'd like to encourage you to pray and ask God for forgiveness and ask him to open your heart to see people the way he sees them, because we're all the same at the end of the day. Well, you know what I mean. We were all created by God, and we all have potential to be something glorifying for him if we give our lives to Jesus and allow him to take our lives over. Thank you for listening. Please give me your comments on this matter. Please feel free to tell me what you think about this, and if you have struggled with a certain judgment or preconceived idea about any type of people that you have overcome, and that would be great for you to share that. Until then, see you soon. Bye bye.